Hi, and welcome back to this Free-for-All Friday edition of Focal Point AFR Talk. I'm talking to you while I am posting something on our Focal Point Facebook page. If you haven't been there, go to the Focal Point Facebook page and click the like button and track the stuff that we post there. What I posted today is a link to a column I've just written this morning, and I'm going to kind of walk you through some of the content of that column. It's now up on our news site at onenewsnow.com, and I want to talk with you in this next little segment about the door of opportunity I believe that Phil Robertson has opened up for us as men of God. And I'm talking right now to men. Now, women, you tend to show more courage in this stuff than we do. You'll get right up in people's faces to defend and proclaim the truth. We tend to kind of hang back. We want to be nice. We want to adjust. We want to accommodate. We want to adapt. So this appeal that I'm going to make in these next few minutes is addressed to the men of God that are in the sound of my voice all across this country. We have network stations in 35 states. I'm talking to everybody that's listening to me right now. And I want to talk with you about the significance of what Phil Robertson has done for us. You know, I was talking with Buddy Smith this morning, by the way, who's our executive vice president. And we were just laughing about what has happened here. You know, you've got the Billy Grahams out there. You have the James Dobsons out there. You have the Tony Perkinses out there. You have the Richard Lands out there, the Russell Moores, all of these people who are committed to representing God in the public arena. And it wasn't any one of them, it wasn't any one of us who brought the issue of homosexuality, human sexuality, salvation, the Word of God into the public debate. It was a duck hunter. It was a guy with a beard that makes duck calls for a living. That is the guy that God picked to focus the attention of the nation on human sexuality, marriage, sin, and the Bible. And we were just laughing about that. I mean, it just, it's just like God. He's got a sense of humor. Who's the guy that he uses to make this issue front and center? A duck hunter. Doesn't use some guy that's seminary trained and got a PhD after his name. Not that there's anything wrong with that. Not somebody in a three-piece Book Brothers button-down suit. Doesn't have to be any of that. This is just an ordinary guy. And here's my point. This is my point, ladies and gentlemen. This guy is an ordinary guy just like you and just like me. So God used an ordinary guy to make these very, very important issues front and center in our culture. And here's one other thing I want to mention. By the way, there's a boycott page for A&E. It's been set up, a Facebook page. It's got over 1 million likes. 1 million likes, like in 24 hours, a boycott A&E page. And here's my point. It is the response of the American people, the overwhelming response of the American people, to me, that is significant here. That's what's significant. That's where the door of opportunity has been opened, and I want to walk you through that here in the next couple minutes. And one other point I want to make before we jump into that, this is very, very important. And this just popped into my head when I was talking to Buddy Smith this morning. What people who are squeamish about this stuff, they're nervous Nellies about politics and public policy. And what you will hear them say all the time is we just ought to stay away from those political issues. They're controversial. It's just messy. We're just here to do what? We are just here to proclaim the gospel. That's all we're supposed to do. Just preach the gospel, leave all that political stuff, all that public policy stuff. We ought to just stay out of that business altogether and just go preach the gospel. Fine. Let me ask you this. I've been watching networks and I've been following stories over the next several days over this Phil Robertson thing. And when A&E posted his second statement, his response, he said, look, my mission in life is to proclaim the gospel of Jesus Christ. And he explained why, how he had been saved from his sin, had been forgiven, had been given a new life. And he said, it's my mission in life to proclaim the gospel of Jesus Christ. Now, let me ask you this question. There are literally millions of Americans now today that know what the mission in Phil Robertson's life is that it is to proclaim the gospel. They know something about what the gospel is. How did that happen? It happened because he was willing to take a stand for biblical morality on the issue of homosexuality and marriage. What opened the door for the proclamation of the gospel? That's why you cannot separate these things. If we are faithful to proclaim the whole word of God, even when it's not directly on the issue of salvation, let's say, it's on the issue of human sexuality and marriage, but what we are proclaiming is the very word of God. What happens? It opens up the opportunity to talk about the gospel. So let's not hear that noise about how we're just here to preach the gospel. Somebody brings it up, just say, hey, what about Phil Robertson? He was talking about the gospel to the entire nation. How did that happen? It happened because he was willing to take a public stand on a controversial contemporary issue. Now, here's what I want to talk about. And I believe that Phil Robertson here has created a historic opportunity for us as evangelicals and for us as social conservatives, an opportunity to actually begin to reverse our cultural slide into sexual deviancy and begin turning this entire ship of state around and headed back in the direction of sexual normalcy. The only question that remains now, Phil Robertson has opened the door by his courage, his boldness, his refusal to back down, his refusal to retreat, taking a stand, planting his feet just like we're taught to do in Ephesians 6. After you've done everything, stand firm. That's what Phil Robertson has done. Standing on the word of God, and after all the pushback, the blowback, the firestorm, he's standing right where he started. After you've done everything, stand firm, just like a duck hunter, Phil Robertson. Now, the only question is, are we as evangelicals and like-minded Americans, are we going to seize this opportunity? Are we going to seize this moment? Well, are we going to capture the energy that Phil Robertson has generated, and are we going to draw on that energy, inspired by his example, to take on the entrenched fortresses of error, deception, and sexual abnormality that right now dominate our social landscape? Now, this whole thing, what Big Gay has done here, the bullies and intolerant bigots of Big Gay, what they have done in this circumstance has been very revealing. I said at the beginning of this, I said, batten down the hatches. Big Gay is going to come after Phil Robertson, hammer and tongs. And you want to see what hate looks like. I said this at the beginning, one of the first things I said on Twitter. You want to see what real hate looks like. Look at what Big Gay is going to try to do to Phil Robertson. And it's been revealing, because what we have seen is that these intolerant bullies and bigots of Big Gay have been exposed for the mean, vicious, and schoolyard bullies that they in fact are. Very revealing. Dan Savage is a very active and open practitioner of the homosexual lifestyle. He's vicious, mean, bullying toward Christians and people who believe in conservative values. He was on Anderson Croupen's program last night, and he didn't even really want to talk about homosexual behavior because, remember, Phil Robertson got very explicit, anatomically correct in what happens in homosexual sex. He talked about what it is that happens when two men have sex, what goes where. And, frankly, everybody would look at that, unless they were conditioned by culture. Look, that's gross. That is not what the human body was designed for. That's not a part of the body that's designed for that use. Everybody says that. Some people call it the ick factor. The word for abomination in the Old Testament literally refers to a stench. It's just something you have a visceral reaction when it rises to your nostrils. And that's kind of the reaction we have, just this visceral reaction to what happens when two men have sex. And Dan Savage says, look, this is what Phil Robertson, so I didn't even want to talk about that. And he got off onto this other thing about how Phil Robertson is supposed to be some sort of a racist. So why did he slide off of that? Because this whole thing has not been good for the gays. It's exposed them for the vicious, mean bullies that they are. Now, it's been interesting to me to see the backlash against the bullies of Big Gay. Americans who still possess a moral compass, they've overwhelmed A&E's Facebook page, their website, their contact form, their caller lines to express support for Phil Robertson and to express their disappointment and disapproval of A&E for capitulating to the bullies of Big Gay. He's just speaking for the majority of Americans, and that's what we're finding out here. Now, the Robertson family, they said yesterday, look, we can't imagine the show going forward without the patriarch at the helm. So what does that mean? They're going to walk. They're out of here. They're gone. And that means A&E is toast. This is going to go down as the mother of all marketing mistakes. This is going to make New Coke look like marketing geniuses, the people that brought New Coke out. So, the big gay aimed at Phil Robertson. Who'd they take out? They took out A&E, took out a target that is the champion of the LGBT agenda. So here's the turning point, this intensely negative response to what A&E has done. This is the moment of opportunity. So what Phil Robertson has done here, it may have brought us to the point where social conservatives have just about had it with being pushed around, with being insulted, with being demeaned, with being denigrated, with being deprived of our basic American rights to the free exercise of religion and freedom of speech. And they're beginning to think, look, let's follow Phil's example. It is time to throw caution to the wind. It's time to believe with Alexander Solzhenitsyn that one word of truth outweighs the whole world. It's time to refuse the premise of the left that the truth is hate speech. The truth is only hate speech to people who hate the truth. So they're saying, look, it's just time to speak up. Shakespeare said, one of his plays, there is a tide in the affairs of men which taken at the flood leads on to fortune, and we must take the current when it serves or lose our ventures. In other words, you have to seize the day. Carpe diem. Seize the day, seize the opportunity, seize the moment. Because if that energy, that tide of energy, if it's not harnessed, if it's not sustained, if it's not directed at these ruling deceptions and this entrenched evil we have around us, it will dissipate, it'll be wasted, and our cultural wasteland will remain and continue to be a cultural wasteland. So what's significant about this beyond everything else is the way in which it has galvanized ordinary Americans who have just had it with being told to sit down and shut up. So in Phil, they found a true American hero, somebody who has the courage to tell it like it is. So I think they know the time has come to vocally defend the moral values that have made the United States the freest, strongest, most prosperous nation in the history of the world. And I'll tell you, this spooks the homosexual lobby. I mean, what keeps them awake at night is thinking about 100 million Phil Robertsons out across the United States of America. So they're trying to shut him up and shut him down, but they can't shut him up and they can't shut us down if we stand with Phil. Remember that movie, I Am Spartacus? They all stood up and they couldn't pick out Spartacus because everybody identified with him. That is our watchword. Ladies and gentlemen, men of America, I am Phil Robertson.